He left home as a famous doctor, a man of science and medicine, and returned over a decade later as a seer and a weaver of prophecy.
Nostradamus's predictions reflect the deepest obsessions of the people, a fear of natural cataclysms and their absolutized forms like the end of the world, a fear of diseases, a fear of war, and a fear of seeing the Antichrist. Nostradamus has issued chilling predictions for 2025. His visions point to an unsettling future that has captured global attention. Conflicting prophecies about the outcome of the U.S. presidential election are gradually emerging. Alongside these are bleak predictions about the future of America. These predictions were revealed to this man by God himself.
I see visions. The Lord gives me things. And so this is what the Lord showed me.
The winner of the American presidential election. The modern Nostradamus, as known a historian and election forecaster who has successfully predicted the last 9 out of 10 presidential elections, is sticking by his forecast. Democratic nominee Kamala Harris will beat Republican Donald Trump during the election to become the first female president, Alan Lichtman predicts. Known as the Nostradamus of elections, the latest forecast matches his earlier predictions despite the vice president's lead in battleground states shrinking and polls that show a neck-and-neck race. Lichtman mentioned 13 keys, which are party mandate. After the midterm elections, the incumbent party holds more seats in the House than after the previous midterm elections. Contest. There is no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. Incumbency. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. Third party. There is no significant campaign from a third party or independent candidate. Short-term economy. The economy is not in recession during the election campaign. Long-term economy. Real per capita economic growth during the term equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous 2 terms. Policy change. Incumbent administration affects major changes in national policy. Social unrest. No sustained social unrest during the term. Scandal. Incumbent administration is untainted by major scandal. Foreign military failure. The incumbent administration suffers no major failure in foreign or military affairs. Foreign military success. Incumbent administration achieves major success in foreign or military affairs. Incumbent charisma. Incumbent party candidate is charismatic or a national hero. Challenger charisma. A challenging party candidate is not charismatic or a national hero. Lichtman maintained the 8 keys he deemed true favored Harris and were unchanged. 3 were deemed false and favored Trump. The White House party gained House seats in the 2022 midterms, the sitting president is running for re-election, and the determination that Harris wasn't a particularly charismatic candidate. 2 other keys, foreign policy failure or success, were a toss-up and could be pivotal. Meanwhile, the Simpsons prediction gave the opposite view. On Tuesday, November 15, 2022, Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, lost his bid for a second term. But this powerful man decided it was time to reclaim the throne he lost in 2021. He returned to the White House race in 2024. In his usual grandiose fashion, Trump took to the stage and proclaimed his ambition with his iconic words, "In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. But just as I promised, I am your voice." Interestingly, in a 2015 episode titled Bart to the Future, Homer Simpson is depicted flying past a sign in the background that reads, "Trump 2024. Interestingly, the episode came way before Trump had even become president. Recently, Trump experienced an unsuccessful accident. His strong actions afterward received significant support from the American people, indicating that his path back to the White House seemed more open. If Trump once again ascends to glory, the Simpsons will once again make history for their predictions that came true. Or Nostradamus. No one gonna know until the final result is revealed. The economic collapse of America. Trump's legacy, should he become president, will be the cost of his long-held ambition to ramp up his trade wars against the world. While it hasn't received much attention, a second Trump administration is threatening a high-stakes gamble to revive America's economy by erecting walls around the country's manufacturing base. The former president's great plan is to return America to an undetermined time, somewhere in the past, when the country's industrial might have made it a force to be reckoned with. We are not sure, but in the scenario where Trump sits back on the throne, how will the America's future be?
So a lot of people wanted to know about the economic crisis that I saw coming. I believe it happens at the beginning of next year.
It is a planned economic collapse. He described seeing a dam filled with all kinds of unpleasant sludge-like substances. There were barrels with labels on them, saying things like finances, bank collapse, and bank structure meltdown. He saw large 50-gallon drums and noted that this was an unusual experience to share. In his vision, the dam looked similar to the Hoover Dam, holding back what should have been water, but instead, it was a thick, swampy, muddy liquid. Floating in this sludge were the 50-gallon drums, labeled with phrases like economic crisis and dollar crash. The Lord, he recalled, revealed that all this was being held back until the election ended, after which it would be released. He saw the dam break, flooding American soil, and the 50-gallon drums rolled down in what resembled toxic waste spilling out. This, he explained, was a vision he had not shared before. He then saw people in food lines stretching down the street, which happened almost instantly. It was a rapid and devastating series of events, leading to a dollar collapse. In this vision, he saw that the first year hit suddenly, leaving people shocked and unprepared, as if they were caught in cold weather with summer clothes. It symbolized a time of sudden loss, as prosperity and blessings, the leaves and fruit of the oak, were stripped away, leaving the tree bare. The oak tree, representing America, remained standing, but its wealth had been depleted. He believed that the vision of the 4 years of hardship didn't signify 4 seasons, but 4 full years of economic struggle. People initially faced difficulties and by the second and third years had adapted, but still appeared weary, with dirty faces and worn clothing, reminiscent of Depression-era images. By the 4th year, however, he saw signs of recovery. President Trump appeared in another vision, attempting to piece together parts of a broken airplane, symbolizing America. The plane's different parts, like the wing, cockpit, tail, and wheels, were scattered, and Trump could not fully restore it to its original state. Instead, he salvaged what he could, creating a new type of aircraft that could fly but would never be as good as it once was. The airplane, marked with USA in black letters, appeared mirrored, as if made of silver aluminum. He emphasized that this was a warning. Although the plane could fly again, America would not return to its former state. He noted that after the dam broke and the dollar crashed, people were left standing in lines. This vision of hardship reminded him of when he saw President Trump praying in the Oval Office, which he thought could have lasted for months. He believed that the economic downturn could span 4 years, symbolized by 4 oak trees, each representing a challenging year. The whole of America should pray together for peace in all states, for the sake of its citizens. The prophecy of Nostradamus could come true, and everybody should pay attention and be prepared for what is to come. Americans should unite together. Let's pray the Lord returns. Prayers and believing in God will change every prophecy. A year of war and catastrophe. The 16th century French astrologer foresaw a war erupting in Europe that could have devastating global repercussions. He has forecasted a catastrophic war in Europe in 2025, predicting widespread devastation and significant population loss. His prophecy suggests a new conflict will arise between the two nations. He has also foreseen two revolutionary developments: a long-awaited encounter with extraterrestrial life, and a major breakthrough in telepathy, with the potential for perfecting this mind-to-mind communication technique. His centuries-old prophecies speak of cruel wars engulfing the continent and the resurgence of an ancient plague, worse than enemies. Nostradamus also suggested that the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict will conclude due to mutual exhaustion, implying a wear-down of resources and willpower on both sides. However, this respite may be short-lived, as he also foresees devastating natural disasters in Brazil, including volcanic eruptions and severe flooding. These catastrophes may have far-reaching consequences, potentially reshaping global dynamics. God enlightens every prophecy. Before we continue exploring Nostradamus's next predictions for humanity in 2025, let's take a moment to consider the spiritual strength that accompanied him during those moments of judgment. God's mysteries are incomprehensible, and the power to influence events is bound up with the great expanse of natural knowledge, having its nearest, most immediate origin in free will and describing future events that cannot be understood simply through being revealed. Neither can they be grasped through men's interpretations, nor through another mode of cognizance or occult power under the firmament, neither in the present nor in the total eternity to come. Perfect knowledge of such things cannot be acquired without divine inspiration, given that all prophetic inspiration derives its initial origin from God Almighty, then from chance and nature. Since all these portents are produced impartially, prophecy comes to pass partly as predicted. For understanding created by the intellect cannot be acquired by means of the occult, only by the aid of the zodiac, bringing forth that small flame by whose light part of the future may be discerned. For by the latter, with the help of inspiration, divine revelation, and continual calculations, Nostradamus has set down his prophecies in writing. This will be after the visible judgment of heaven, before we reach the millennium, which shall complete all. In the firmament of the eighth sphere, a dimension whereon Almighty God will complete the revolution, and where the constellations will resume their motion, which will render the earth stable and firm, but only if he will remain unchanged forever until his will be done. This is in spite of all the ambiguous opinions surpassing all natural reason, which is why God the Creator, through the ministry of his fiery agents with their flames, will come to propose to our perceptions as well as our eyes the reasons for future predictions. Everything is predicted by divine afflatus, and thanks to an angelic spirit inspiring the one prophesying, consecrating his predictions through divine unction. It also divests him of all fantasies by means of various nocturnal apparitions, while with daily certainty he prophesies through the science of astronomy with the aid of sacred prophecy, his only consideration being his courage in freedom. For God's mercy will be poured forth only for a certain time, my son, until the majority of my prophecies are fulfilled, and this fulfillment is complete. Then several times in the course of the doleful tempests, the Lord shall say, "Therefore I shall crush and destroy and show no mercy." And many other circumstances shall result from floods and continual rain, of which I have written more fully in my other prophecies, composed at some length, not in a chronological sequence, in prose, limiting the places and times and exact dates so that future generations will see, while experiencing these inevitable events, how I have listed others in clearer language so that despite their obscurities, these things shall be understood. When the time comes for the removal of ignorance, the matter will be clearer still. Pope Francis's farewell. According to his 1555 text, Les Prophéties, or what we can call the prophecies, this year brings continued global strife, including the war on the seas, royal turmoil, and humanitarian disaster. According to Nostradamus, we could be facing a year that could mean the farewell to Pope Francis, who at 88 years of age in 2025 has already gone through several health problems. The Pope had to skip the UN climate conference because of lung inflammation and breathing problems. Through the death of a very old pontiff, a Roman of good age will be elected. Of him it will be said that he weakens his see, but long will he sit and in biting activity, Nostradamus wrote. While the arrival of a younger, vigorous pope sounds like a good thing, Nostradamus immediately goes on to say that the new leader will weaken his see and that he will be pope for a long time. The exact meaning of weaken is, of course, open to debate. Does he mean the influence of the church will somehow lessen, or is some greater scandal on the way? Well, only time will tell. However, it's essential to note that his writings, particularly in Les Prophéties, are written in a cryptic and metaphorical style that is open to various interpretations. Many of his quatrains are vague and can be applied to different events. The end of King Charles III. The prophecy of Nostradamus that could cover King Charles III has triggered a lot of discussions. It was alleged that King Charles of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was diagnosed with prostate cancer only 20 months after ascending to the throne upon the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. This news has raised a lot of concern and speculation. The British author Mario Reading specializes in the work of Nostradamus and found a prophecy that seems to match this diagnosis. He analyzed Nostradamus's prophecy and interpreted it in the words, "Because they disapproved of his divorce, a man who later they considered unworthy, the people will force out the king of the islands. A man will replace who never expected to be king." Nostradamus also predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, accurately stating her age at the time of passing. Mario Reading's analysis of this prophecy states, Queen Elizabeth II will die circa 22 at the age of around 96. The prophecy suggests that King Charles's reign might be cut short. One part of the prophecy reads, "King of the Isles driven out by force, replaced by one who will have no mark of a king." This mysterious line has led to many theories about what might happen next. Some people think it means King Charles could be forced to step down because of his health. Others believe it might hint at a more dramatic removal from power. With rumors that King Charles III might abdicate, many are curious who the next in line would be. The most evident candidate is Prince William, as he is the first in line to the British throne. William, the Prince of Wales, has been preparing for this role for many years. His dedication to royal duties and his increasing involvement in significant matters show he is ready to step up if needed. Close friends and sources have mentioned his growing interest in gaining leadership and his desire to make a meaningful impact, indicating he could be ready to assume the role of king sooner than expected. However, this line of succession has been complicated by another prophecy from Nostradamus. The prophecy suggests that the new ruler will have no mark of a king, which has led to speculation that someone unconventional might take the throne. This has brought Prince Harry into the conversation. Despite stepping back from royal duties and moving to the United States, Prince Harry's return to the UK during his father's health crisis has fueled these speculations. His departure from traditional royal norms and his strained relationship with the family increase the mystery of the prophecy. Prince Harry's decision and lifestyle, which do not align with conventional royal expectations, and his controversies make him an unlikely but possible candidate. Even though it is difficult for many to imagine him becoming a king, this prophecy has given rise to several hypotheses. Some believe that it may signal a significant change in the order of succession in the royal family, possibly due to unexpected circumstances or a crisis within the monarchy. Critics argue that his writings are too generalized to be considered as predictions. For example, the prophecy about the King of the Isles could be any king, and not necessarily King Charles III. This confusion has led to various interpretations, with some historians and theologians suggesting different outcomes. According to some theologians, he could have suggested a wider shift in the political system of the UK. The phrase, "someone with no mark of a king," could imply a shift away from the monarchy altogether, suggesting a move towards a more democratic form of government. This interpretation, while radical, shows the ongoing discussions about the future of the British monarchy and its relevance in the modern period. Natural disaster. The dry earth will grow more parched, and there will be great floods when it is seen, wrote Nostradamus. He also predicted extreme weather events and world hunger. Very great famine through pestiferous wave, to be precise. The prophet also predicts a cruel tsunami and great floods that will ravage parts of the world, followed by a devastating great famine. Nostradamus warned that the earth will become more arid and there will be great floods. The implication is that the tsunami may impact farmland, contributing to a severe famine. Finally, the Frenchman considered that next year there will be a strong and dangerous earthquake in the world that will mean the loss of thousands of lives. Although the place is not specified, it is reminiscent of what happened recently in Morocco, where thousands of people have lost their lives due to a great earthquake in Marrakesh and surroundings, or the natural disasters that Iceland is suffering at the moment, which could prove Nostradamus right again. Having said that, we will also mention what the Bible says about the end time, and you should try to reflect on the reality with the prophecy from Nostradamus. In Matthew 24:5-8, Jesus gives us some important clues for discerning the approach of the end times. Many will come in my name, claiming, "I am the Christ," and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. An increase in false messiahs, an increase in warfare, and increases in famines, plagues, and natural disasters. These are signs of the end times. The rise of China. A confrontation around China is something that many geopolitical experts and journalists have started to see in the changing dynamics and rise of China as a global power. In the past, China has showcased its brute force several times in regions around the South China Sea and Taiwan, most of them through its naval ships. Analysts believe this may allude to the escalating conflict in Asia, with China involving NATO countries, potentially leading to a violent military conflict or an all-out war. Nostradamus also predicted something similar to this centuries ago. In one of his quatrains, he wrote about combat and naval battle. He said that the red adversary will become pale with fear, putting the great ocean in dread. Some think that the red adversary could be referring to China. The current focal point of global concern is the rise of China as a dominant force. It's interesting to note that some of Nostradamus's prophecies may have referenced this emerging trend shortly. Nostradamus states in a verse that opens with a vision of battle and maritime warfare that the red adversary will become pale with fear, putting the great ocean in dread. Scholars are busy decoding whether red adversary refers to communist China and whether the remaining quatrain would suggest a naval conflict.
Michel de Nostradamus, The Prophecies.
Baba Vanga had given thousands of accurate predictions and gained a reputation as the Nostradamus of the Balkans.
Both being great prophets of humanity, the centuries-old prophecies of Nostradamus and Baba Vanga still astonish mankind with their accuracy. In just a few months, the world will officially enter the year 2025, which means that the predictions of these two prophets have a high chance of coming true in 2025. Will what awaits us in 2025 be a disaster or a vision of happiness? All will be revealed shortly as we explore the mysterious content behind these centuries-old prophecies. The controversial life and legacy of these two prophets. People's timeless captivation with those supposedly endowed with supernatural powers is a fascinating phenomenon in itself. The prophets were particularly revered in past centuries, even by royals, nobles, and other influential figures, who placed oracles and mystics in their retinues and sought counsel from them on a regular basis. Queen Elizabeth I, for example, famously appointed controversial polymath and occultist John Dee as her personal advisor. Various American presidents, including George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, are also known to have worked with psychics and spiritualists on at least one occasion. Needless to say, prophetic predictions regarding large-scale, epoch-making events that reportedly came to pass have only further cemented the convictions of believers, and in some cases, these stunning revelations have even caused skeptics to review their positions. Nostradamus, a 16th-century physician, astrologer, sage, and seer, is perhaps the most renowned clairvoyant in history, as he apparently forecasted numerous transformative affairs centuries ahead of his time. In one such prophecy, he referenced a young child born of poor people from the depths of the west of Europe, who would go on to seduce a great troop by his tongue, which many now believe alluded to the rise of Adolf Hitler. While Nostradamus remains the most famous, a legendary prophet grew up further east during the 20th century. Known by millions of followers as the beloved Baba Vanga, she was a blind mystic often called the Balkan Nostradamus. Despite her extremely humble beginnings, minimal education, and the seemingly endless string of hardships she suffered in her early life, the resilient, insightful, and peerlessly intuitive Vanga achieved global fame and recognition with her otherworldly visions and frighteningly accurate prophecies, attracting scores of domestic and international visitors from all walks of life, ranging from fellow villagers to celebrities and foreign dignitaries who clung on to her every word. The loyalty of her fan base, many of whom continue to spread forth her predictions and invaluable pearls of wisdom over 20 years after her death, is a testament to her prowess, especially in the present, when skepticism and cynicism have become the norm. Nostradamus predictions. With the death of Queen Elizabeth, the Pope's abdication, the age of the Antichrist, the terrifying rise of AI, and nations becoming aggressive and bringing each other down, what is mentioned in the Bible is almost once again suggested. The accuracy of his predictions surprised the world. He is Nostradamus, the 16th century French astrologer. The Les Prophéties is said to be a secret book when recording Nostradamus's prophecies to this world. The more time passes, the more Nostradamus's prophecy is confirmed. Nostradamus was born in France in 1503. He first worked as a physician and began his medical practice in the 1530s, although he did so without a medical degree. He began making prophecies about 1547, and he published his prophecies in a book entitled Centuries. He wrote his prophecies in quatrains, 4 lines of rhyming verse. The quatrains were grouped in hundreds. Each set of 100 quatrains was called a century. One of the 2025 predictions of Nostradamus will happen very soon is the prediction about the end of King Charles III. The prophecy of Nostradamus that could cover King Charles III has triggered a lot of discussions. It was alleged that King Charles of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was diagnosed with prostate cancer only 20 months after ascending to the throne upon the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. This news has raised a lot of concern and speculation. The British author Mario Redding specializes in the work of Nostradamus and found a prophecy that seems to match this diagnosis. He analyzed Nostradamus's prophecy and interpreted it in the words, "Because they disapproved of his divorce, a man who later they considered unworthy. The people will force out the king of the islands. A man will replace who never expected to be king." Nostradamus also predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, accurately stating her age at the time of passing. Mario Reading's analysis of this prophecy states, Queen Elizabeth II will die circa 22 at the age of around 96. The prophecy suggests that King Charles's reign might be cut short. One part of the prophecy reads, King of the Isles driven out by force, replaced by one who will have no mark of a king. This mysterious line has led to many theories about what might happen next. Some people think it means King Charles could be forced to step down because of his health. Others believe it might hint at a more dramatic removal from power. With rumors that King Charles III might abdicate, many are curious who the next in line would be. The most evident candidate is Prince William, as he is the first in line to the British throne. William, the Prince of Wales, has been preparing for this role for many years. His dedication to royal duties and his increasing involvement in significant matters show he is ready to step up if needed. Close friends and sources have mentioned his growing interest in gaining leadership and his desire to make a meaningful impact, indicating he could be ready to assume the role of king sooner than expected. However, this line of succession has been complicated by another prophecy from Nostradamus. The prophecy suggests that the new ruler will have no mark of a king, which has led to speculation that someone unconventional might take the throne. This has brought Prince Harry into the conversation. Despite stepping back from royal duties and moving to the United States, Prince Harry's return to the UK during his father's health crisis has fueled these speculations. His departure from traditional royal norms and his strained relationship with the family increase the mystery of the prophecy. Prince Harry's decision and lifestyle, which do not align with conventional royal expectations, and his controversies make him an unlikely but possible candidate. Even though it is difficult for many to imagine him becoming a king, this prophecy has given rise to several hypotheses. Some believe that it may signal a significant change in the order of succession in the royal family, possibly due to unexpected circumstances or a crisis within the monarchy. Critics argue that his writings are too generalized to be considered as predictions. For example, the prophecy about the King of the Isles could be any king and not necessarily King Charles III. This confusion has led to various interpretations, with some historians and theologians suggesting different outcomes. According to some theologians, he could have suggested a wider shift in the political system of the UK. The phrase, someone with no mark of a king, could imply a shift away from the monarchy altogether, suggesting a move towards a more democratic form of government. This interpretation, while radical, shows the ongoing discussions about the future of the British monarchy and its relevance in the modern period. This prophet also mentions the end times and the Middle Eastern Antichrist. In Les Prophéties, published in 1555, Nostradamus mentioned that in 2025 there will be a number of troubles happening globally, including increased conflicts, geopolitical problems, wars at sea, problems with the royal family, and a major humanitarian disaster. But the biggest worry that humanity faces in 2025 is likely to be nature, when a series of climate disasters are predicted to occur and threaten human life. The dry earth will become drier, and suddenly a great flood will come. This is a verse taken from the work Les Prophéties, showing what Nostradamus predicted in 2025. To describe this verse, it can be understood that the already harsh climate situation will get worse. The French prophet predicts that extreme weather phenomena, such as record heat, forest fires, droughts, and storms, will increasingly occur with greater frequency and intensity. Global warming is a huge phenomenon going on in the modern day. The Bible does not specifically talk about climate change or global warming. However, the Bible does tell us the world will eventually be burned in fire, which could be another way to understand how alarming the Earth's condition will gradually become. 2 Peter 3:10 informs us, "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare." God will one day erase this current universe and replace it with the new heavens and new earth. How much effort should be made saving a planet that God is eventually going to obliterate and replace with a planet so amazing and wonderful that the current Earth pales in comparison? In a world gripped by uncertainty and unrest, the prophecies of Nostradamus have captivated believers and skeptics alike for centuries. Among his many predictions, none are as chilling as those foretelling the end times and the rise of a Middle Eastern Antichrist. With a reputation for accuracy, Nostradamus has unnerved generations with his eerily precise visions of future events. Now, in this article, we delve into the mysterious verses penned by the renowned seer and explore his warnings of cataclysmic events that could reshape our world forever. As we explore the prophecies of Nostradamus, we are confronted with chilling anticipation. How accurate were his visions? How do his predictions align with the current geopolitical landscape? And what do they mean for the future of humanity? From wars and natural disasters to the rise of a leader shrouded in darkness, our journey into the world of Nostradamus promises to be a thought-provoking and unsettling one. Join us as we unravel the cryptic verses and attempt to interpret the fate of our world as predicted by Nostradamus. A huge famine. The French seer also added that 2025 will see a huge famine brought on by a wave of pestilence. First, we talk about the famine. If we put Nostradamus's prophecy next to what the Bible teaches, you will see the coincidence that they both mention Famine. Back to the past, Israel occupied the rocky highlands of Canaan, the area of present-day Jerusalem and the hills to the north of it, rather than fertile coastal plains. Even in the best of years, it took enormous effort to coax sufficient sustenance out of the ground. The rainy seasons were brief. Any precipitation less than normal could be devastating. Across the ancient Near East, drought and famine were feared. In the 13th century BC, nearly all of the Eastern Mediterranean civilizations collapsed because of a prolonged drought. In the book of Deuteronomy, God proclaims that if Israel obeys the laws, the Lord will open for you his bounteous store, the heavens, to provide rain for your land in season. Disobedience, however, will have the opposite effect. The skies above your head shall be copper, and the earth under you iron. The Lord will make the rain of your land dust, and sand shall drop on you from the sky, until you are wiped out. To ancient Israelites, there was no such thing as nature as we understand it today, and no such thing as chance. If things were good, it was because God was happy. If things were going badly, it was because the deity was angry. For a national catastrophe like famine, the sin had to lie either with the entire people or with the monarchs who represented them. And it was the task of prophets and oracles to determine the cause of the divine wrath. Famine was seen as both punishment and opportunity. Suffering opened the door for repentance and change. For example, when the famously wise King Solomon inaugurates the temple in Jerusalem, he prays that God will be forgiving when, in the future, a famine-stricken Israel turns toward the newly built temple for mercy. In the book of Samuel, we read that Israel endured a 3-year famine in the time of David, considered Israel's greatest king. When David inquires as to the cause of the famine, he is told that it is due to the sins of his predecessor and mortal enemy, Saul. For someone, famine was both an ending, the result of disobedience and sin, and also a beginning, a potential turning point toward a better, more faithful future. Second, many believe the wave of pestilence in Nostradamus's word widely believed to describe deadly earthquakes. Let's take a closer look at these verses in Mark the 13 to 7 to 8. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginning of birth pains. Doubtless, somewhere people will again start to use such disasters as signs that we are living in the last days. Or, to put it more accurately, since the New Testament consistently insists the last days began with Christ's first coming, they will insist that we are living in the last days of the last days. But wait. Revelation depicts apocalyptic earthquakes during the tribulation itself of a greater magnitude than anything the world has ever seen. But the place in Scripture where people turn to make a link between ordinary earthquakes and the nearness of the end is Jesus' Olivet Discourse. Earthquakes and famines. These are merely the beginning of birth pangs. In other words, just as labor pains remind a pregnant mother that there is a baby inside her that the body wants to bring into the world, so do these various earthly disasters remind believers that Christ will return, ending human history as we now know it. Continuing with the prophecy about rise of cryptocurrencies. Nostradamus wrote a book with about 1,000 French quatrains divided into ages, most of which are undated prophecies for which he is famous to this day. One of them says, "Copies of gold and silver were inflated. After then, they were thrown into the lake. Everything was exhausted and dissolved by the debt. All scripts and links will be removed." We can understand that the copies of gold and silver are the banknotes, which, according to the prophecy, will lose much of their value because of their inflation and the extremely large debt all over the world. The quatrain has double reading. Nostradamus refers to the rise of cryptocurrencies during the year 2025. Copies of gold and silver can be considered cryptocurrencies that copy the status of precious metals as a reserve asset. And encryption is spreading at the speed of a Formula One racing car. New intangible coins will appear, and investors will flock to their digital world, as known as metaverse. Nostradamus warns about the collapse of fiat money, like coins and banknotes. Let not this prophecy be regarded as an exhortation to the market cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies were invented because banknotes have started and are still losing in value. Let's not forget that cryptocurrencies are wind-blown. They do not represent some constant value, such as gold. The moon at night on top of the high mountain. The young sage with the lonely brain sees it. He is invited by his students to be immortal. Eyes to the south, hands on the torso, bodies on the fire. This enigmatic quatrain is a prediction of artificial intelligence's rise. A supernatural warning. Nostradamus's prophecies not only focus on earthly events, but also hint at potential cataclysms coming from the cosmos in 2025. Could a cosmic event, such as an asteroid impact or alien invasion, be the catalyst for the end times? As we look to the stars for answers, are we truly alone in the universe? Or are there forces beyond our comprehension at play? A gloomy situation. There's another quatrain that consolidates Nostradamus's reputation as the prophet of destruction. The lyrics state, "For 40 years the rainbow will not be visible. For 40 years it will appear every day. The dry land will dry out more, and there will be big floods." The prophecy is indeed frightening. As the two superpowers have entered a new era of the Cold War, nuclear disasters will happen at any time in the new year. On the other hand, droughts and floods of biblical proportions threaten the planet. Within 2 decades, glaciers in Africa will be gone. More than 100 million poor people are threatened by droughts, floods, or extreme heat, while climate change can reduce the Black continent's GDP by 3%. Baba Vanga predictions. For 2025, Baba Vanga had predicted the occurrence of severe weather events and natural disasters. The wrath of nature is coming. Baba Vanga had predicted the occurrence of severe weather events and natural disasters in 2024. According to a study published, global heat waves are occurring 67% more frequently. The study reveals that the highest temperatures during these heat waves have increased compared to those recorded 40 years ago, and the affected area under a heat dome has expanded. The study further notes that from 1979 to 1983, global heat waves typically lasted for 8 days on average, whereas from 2016 to 2020, the duration extended to 12 days. Additionally, the World Meteorological Organization has stated that there is a high probability that 2025 will register as another record hot year. With that, Baba Vanga also predicted that there is a forecast of an orbital change that could cause devastating natural disasters across the world. Healthcare drastic development is the next prophecy of Vanga for 2025. The psychic's other prediction was that we would have drastic developments in healthcare. The mystic predicted that new cures for diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer will be invented this year. It sounds unbelievable, but, nothing is impossible with the rapid development of world medicine. President Vladimir Putin recently said that Russian scientists are close to creating a vaccine for cancer that could soon be available to patients. He said, "We have reached a significant milestone in the development of cancer vaccines and next-generation immunomodulatory drugs. I hope that soon they will be effectively used as methods of individual therapy." However, he did not specify the types of cancer the proposed vaccines would target. Furthermore, recent developments have confirmed progress in the development of a lung cancer vaccine. The United Kingdom has allocated funding for 2 years of laboratory research and initial manufacturing of 3,000 doses for a DNA-based lung cancer vaccine, as stated in a press release from the University of Oxford, located in Oxford, England. It cannot be denied that the world will have a positive outlook for cancer patients, and we can fully expect that a miracle will happen in 2025. Cyber attacks. This may be among the most impressive of Baba Vanga's predictions for 2025, since the internet was still in its very early stages when she passed away in 1996. The mystic predicted hackers would increase their attacks, especially against vital infrastructure, thus possibly creating security dangers worldwide. In a similar vein, or wire as it were, Vanga predicted that cyber hackers would amplify threats to national security by targeting infrastructures like power grids and water treatment plants. Most recently, AT&T recently announced a dataset found on the dark web contains information including some social security numbers and passcodes for about 7.6 million current and 65.4 million former account holders. Whether the data originated from AT&T or one of its vendors is still unknown, the Dallas-based company noted, adding that it had launched an investigation into the incident. AT&T has also begun notifying customers whose personal information was compromised. Apple, Meta, and X have all disclosed cybersecurity attacks over the past few years. The Bulgarian mystic. Spi. What was it about Baba Vanga that set her apart from other soothsayers both past and present? How did someone who came from such an obscure village in the Balkans become an international household name? Why were her prophetic visions so highly coveted and trusted by both the domestic and international public? So much so that she was eventually officially employed by the Bulgarian state. To better understand Baba Vanga's effortless prowess and unrivaled abilities, it is necessary to look at the modest, yet striking and eventful years of her early life, which were every bit as riveting as her remarkable career. Baba Vanga was born on January 31st, 1911, in a small, quaint farming village in the city of Strumica. There was little else of note in terms of accomplishment or scandal in Vanga's family. In other words, neither of her predecessors on both sides of the family possessed any unusual talents, much less the power of clairvoyance or any other divine, supernatural gifts sent from above. Now it seemed that the cards were stacked against Vanga from the very beginning. For starters, hers was a premature birth. She was far smaller and bonier than average newborns, and her quivering, delicate frame was riddled with physiological irregularities. As she was not expected to survive, Her parents swaddled her in a warm sheepskin blanket and rested her underneath the oven in the kitchen, essentially waiting for the doomed newborn to pass on peacefully. The soundless and practically motionless newborn was deliberately left nameless so as to prevent her parents from growing too attached to her and to dampen the grief and pain that would ensue when she inevitably died. Fortunately, against all odds, a loud, gurgling cry spilled forth from under the oven 2 months later. Contrary to popular belief, despite Vanga's many health complications resulting from her premature delivery, she was not born blind. In fact, she soon plumped up and recovered from her ailments, and she was a healthy, active young girl with bouncy, honey-blonde curls and bright chocolate-brown eyes. Sadly, the child's natural insouciance and innocence were tarnished by a spate of tragedies. For one, Vanga lost her mother at the tender age of 3. A year later came the outbreak of World War I, which saw her dad, Pando, conscripted by the Kingdom of Bulgaria and dispatched to the Serbian battlefronts, where he fought on the side of the Central Powers. During Pando's absence, which stretched on for at least 24 months, Vanga and her younger brother, Vasil, were left in the guardianship of a kind neighbor. 12-year-old Vanga and her cousins were strolling home from a neighboring pasture one summer's day, where they had just grazed the family's donkeys, when the pulsing billow of clouds hovering above them began to swirl. The children yanked the donkeys' leads and accelerated their pace, attempting to outrun the whistling, spinning column of wind descending from the sinister greenish-gray skies, but it was too late. While the other children managed to duck into a nearby storm cellar in the nick of time, the whirling vortex raged forth, scooping up Vanga and dropping her in a field about half a mile away. The hysterical children split up and scoured the overgrown field for their missing cousin for nearly an hour, to no avail. With Vanga nowhere to be found, they bolted home and alerted the adults. How long Vanga stayed missing remains a matter of debate. Some say she remained missing for several days, left to her own devices with no food, water, and shelter from the elements, which made her recovery that much more miraculous. Others say she was discovered just hours later. Either way, when Vanga was found, her bruised skin was ice cold, and her clothes torn and coated with dirt and debris. The poor girl, still whimpering and shaking like a leaf, mustered up the energy to point to her eyes, which were screwed shut as they were gunked up with sand. The adults rinsed Vanga's eyes vigorously as soon as she was carried home, but the damage had been done. She was unable to open her eyes at all in the weeks that followed, due to the growing pain and the rapid advancement of infection. Her father pawned off some livestock and what little valuables he had at a great loss and requested small loans from neighbors. Even so, he had only raised enough funds for a partial operation. Vanga eventually regained the ability to open and shut her eyelids without discomfort, but her vision steadily worsened as time progressed. She became completely deprived of her eyesight 4 years later, her twinkling brown eyes permanently replaced by milky white pupils. She later lost the ability to open her eyelids again in her old age, which, due to her abundance of wrinkles, almost appeared to be completely sealed shut. While most would argue that the tornado incident was a freak occurrence, Vanga herself was supposedly convinced that it was no accident. In fact, she believed that the tornado had been conjured up by a higher power specifically so that she would lose her vision, thus planting in her the seed of her powers and instilling her with a different kind of clarity. In 1939, 28-year-old Vanga encountered another near-death experience when she contracted chronic pleurisy, its most notable symptom being persistent, excruciating, localized chest pains that are exacerbated by breathing. Her physician was pessimistic about Vanga's recovery, advising her parents to get her affairs in order in preparation for her impending death. Once again, Vanga subverted all expectations and soon bounced back with a clean bill of health. It was then that Vanga's psychic powers began to manifest themselves in earnest. In most accounts, Vanga reportedly received her first otherworldly vision right after the tornado incident when she was awaiting rescue, wherein disembodied spirits informed her of her new gifts of healing and second sight. But she initially chalked it up to temporary delusional psychosis brought about by trauma, starvation, and dehydration. To put it another way, while the tornado had indeed awakened her third eye, it was the pleurisy that ultimately kicked her powers into high gear. Vanga later spoke about an unnamed ancient warrior spirit who visited her during her second tango with death. This was the guardian angel, Vanga claimed, who cleansed her of the disease. She was suddenly inundated with invasive, eerily vivid dreams. She continued to be haunted by phantom voices when she was wide awake, which bled through the walls and emanated from plants and other inanimate objects. She also became involuntarily accustomed to ghostly apparitions that appeared before her, which were not presented as shadowy silhouettes, but detailed, clearly defined figures amidst the usual haze of fuzzy dark colors. The most spectacular of the newfound powers, however, were her precognitive gifts. For the most part, Vanga's Sibyllane visions came without warning. These visions have been likened to short clips that played in her mind, showing flashes of major events in the future. Occasionally, one of her spectral associates clued her in with bits of information to add some context to the puzzling images, but she was mostly left to fill in the blanks herself. Furthermore, Vanga possessed the ability to read people and literally see what lay in store for them specifically. The entire life of the individual in question, starting from their day of birth to their final breaths on their deathbeds, rolled like a feature-length film in her mind's eye. When oracular spirits entered her body, she slipped into a trance. She claimed they spoke through her, as evidenced by the change in her vocal timbre, using her as a vehicle to disseminate warnings about future events and other arcane secrets. At first, Vanga made the decision to keep her dazzling, yet inconceivable gifts to herself. It was only in the first weeks of the following year that she lowered her guard and shared her abilities with family members and close loved ones for the first time. It was a piecemeal process. She began by confiding in them about her ghostly visitors and the bodiless voices, before gradually easing them into her precognitive visions and healing touch. As one might have expected, her loved ones were initially more than skeptical about it all and showed concern for her mental health. But their disbelief swiftly faded when her alarmingly accurate predictions began to come to fruition. They tried to coax her into revealing her divine gifts before an audience, hoping to spread the news via word of mouth, and gushed about all the good that her powers would bring to the world. And then, the life of a great prophet entered a new chapter, and her prophecies contributed to changing the world in some aspect.